Hej och hjärtligt välkomna ska ni vara till Investor Targets pressträff den här gången med Element 79. Element 79, Element 79, är ett kanadensiskt börsnoterat gruvbolag fokuserat på att skapa aktieägarvärde i det korta såväl som i det långa perspektivet. Så att det här blir en mycket spännande och presentation med en ny vinkel. Eftersom dagens bolag är engelskspråkigt kommer presentationen nu att fortsätta på engelska. Hello, welcome, and if you tuned in to pressträff from Canada, a very good morning to you all. As always with our broadcast, you can and you watch this live, you can interact with the management, and you do so by asking your question in the chat field. We will deal with the questions at the end of this presentation. Pressträff Direkt is a cooperation between Direkt Studios, Investor Target, Stockpicker, and the presenting company, and this time brought to you by Scandinavian Alliance. So with all the disclaimers under the belt, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome James Tworek, CEO of Element 79. James, hello. How are things in Alberta?
Doing great this morning. We've just gotten through a rainy long weekend, as is normal, and we're back to bright blue skies for the rest of the week. Exciting times.
It seems like we share the same kind of weather as often with Canada and Sweden. Great. Well, without further ado, James, the scene is yours. Please take us to your presentation.
Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind jumping just 2 slides ahead, we'll jump right into it. Thank you. One more, please. There we go. So Element 79, who we are and what we do, we're trying to bring a form of innovation to the junior mining business model in general. As any of you may understand, it's very difficult to run a business without cash flow. And unfortunately, the reality of most junior miners is that there is very little cash flow available in basically the development and exploration business model. It's always a business model destined towards doing one capital raise, hoping you use that fruitfully, that the market cycles and the commodity cycles are in your favor so you can go do it again. And eventually, sometimes 7 to 17 years later, maybe you get a producing mine. In our case, what we've done is that we've focused on being able to generate revenue in the near term, as well as keep a portfolio of some high quality exploratory projects down, I guess, for future exploration. And then lastly, as we continue to do this exploration and or actual mining operations, we do have a very stern focus on bringing a positive impact into the communities that we work in. If you could kindly move to the next slide, please. So Element 79, we're about I'm going to call this our 2.0 story, where our 1.0 story was a business model based on aggregating a large portfolio and in the sense of buy low, sell high, waiting for the commodity cycle to have an uptick, which definitely at $2,400 gold and $32 silver, it's pretty exciting for the commodity cycle to be in our favor. And we have been divesting of that portfolio. One of the major turning points of which we'll get into in a couple of moments, but it proves that the sale of a major asset proves that our team has both the aptitude to do what we need, what we're able to do, what we purport to do, as well as moves us forward dramatically in terms of giving us cash to clean up the balance sheet, cash to move our project forward. And the main project left that we're really focused on is the Lucero asset. Lucero is a past producing mine, and in its day, when it was last in commercial production between 1989 and 2005, it was permitted for up to 350 tons a day, but producing at 150 tons per day and yielding between 40 to 50,000 ounces of gold equivalent production per year, which was, if I'm not mistaken, 14.5 grams per ton average yield of gold. And overall 19 grams per ton of gold equivalency. We can talk about the significance of that in a moment, but the simple reality is that we have a past producing mine that is permitted today for ore extraction. We're working through the final steps of obtaining our 10-year, possibly as many as 15-year exploration and extraction permit with the local community And then we will get down to drilling this summer, as well as proving up a resource, and then bringing this mine back into production in the near term. It's a very exciting story. Next slide, please. As I've spoken to, this is a picture of the mine directly. There are three main portals going into the project itself. We can talk about the project a little bit later, more in depth, but again, permitted for 350 tons per day. The local artisanal miners are producing there. Their average production was between 70 to 100 tons per week of high-grade gold and silver that they were extracting and sending down the highway to a toll processing mill about 400 kilometers away. Quick and dirty answer is that we're very excited about being able to put this back into production. The proof case is that the mine itself, number one, was in commercial production for 16 years. The only reason that it was abandoned back in 2005 by the original owner, Buenaventura, was that gold had dipped in that era below the cost of producing another ounce. So gold dipped below $700. It cost them $700 to $800 to produce an ounce. At the end of the day, it was uneconomical for them. But for the artisanal miners, they have continued to produce from this mine. And again, that it's a fantastic beacon for us to follow in terms of saying we can do this too and ramp back up to commercial production, especially at $2,000+ gold. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have a small portfolio of 2 additional projects in Nevada, which will be kept for long-term exploratory, I guess, proof case and proving up resources on those. But at this point, our main focus is Lucero. The next slide, please. In addition to talking about the asset itself, the Lucero asset, more importantly, the true assets of the company, in my personal opinion, are the team. And what I mean by that is that we have a team of global professionals from the mining space and other lines of natural resources businesses. And we have formed the company around, instead of just being an exploratory group that's going to go out and basically find new drill targets and prove up new resource values. That is absolutely part of the business plan, but even more so, if we're saying that we're going to be turning on a mine, we built our team around people who have done that. And I'm talking about large scale, I'll get into the profiles in just a moment, but large scale global level copper and gold projects on a multitude of locations and continents. The simplest point is that we have a team that knows what they're doing when it comes to building mines, working with the communities, and understanding what it takes to make a successful project. And that's a little bit different from your standard exploratory mining company, where typically you have some great exploring geologists, but they don't necessarily translate that skill set into being able to produce from a mine. So if you wouldn't mind jumping to the next slide, I'd like to get into the profiles. Again, the mentality, just a quick breeze through myself, the mentality of being able to get to cash flow first and become a producing venture and business first and foremost comes from my background of A, commercial banking. I spent 7.5 years in banking and commercial banking, and then B, inside of a mezzanine debt fund that focused on project development. The whole history of that is effectively, what is bankable? How does a business become successful? And realistically, it's, the business is at one level. You can sprinkle some, we'll call it risk capital or mezzanine debt or venture capital in the middle to hit a higher plateau. And that's typically an exit, whether through cash flow, so you can pay out that capital, through an exit, so you actually sell the asset or you sell it off in pieces. Or sometimes that there's lower cost debt, bankable debt that comes in the middle. So in the grand scheme of things, this was the foundation of thought behind Element 79. To harness the experts in terms of producing mines, I will go to both Tony Maragakis and Kim Kirkland. Tony is a director of ours. He was actually the original CEO of Kalapuya Resources, which was the asset, the company that acquired to purchase Lucero. And Tony's history is that he has built and operated mines as a engineer and a project manager around the planet. He's worked for Koch Industries, Freeport-McMoRan, Barrick, and Eldorado Resources, Skeena Resources. All of these companies he's helped build from basically pre-revenue to cash flow and or optimized large-scale producing mines. Now, he brought our COO, Kim Kirkland, to the table, who's kind of a perfect key inside the lock of our company, who, number one, is Nevada raised and trained inside Barrick from their Goldstrike mine, so understanding mass-scale operations there. He then jumped down to South America and for over 20 years worked inside of both Antamina, which is a massive producing mine at high altitude in Peru, as well as he worked for 9 years in his last major posting as the operations manager for the Las Bambas project. And Las Bambas, during his tenure there, was Peru's largest copper producer. And if Peru is the second largest copper producer on the planet, second to third, depending on the year and the statistics, producing or operating in a mine of that scale is far different from operating a small scale mine like our own. So in the sense of hooking a racehorse up to an apple cart, we have some amazing brain power, skill, and aptitude in terms of operating mines, and they're hooked up to our project here. If you wouldn't mind jumping to the next slide, please. Thank you. Our board is also made up of other mining professionals. Neil Pettigrew, held in very high esteem with the Ontario Geologic Society, study, as well as he is the VP Exploration for a company that has just changed its names. I'll probably get it wrong, but I believe it's GT Minerals, who has assets they're exploring for both palladium and other, I believe, rare earths in Scandinavia, as well as Northern Ontario and Quebec. Fantastic gentleman to be our qualified person, our QP, on all of our reports, and very happy to be working with someone of his caliber. Mr. George Toomer is a Colorado School of Mines educated mining professional who has built multiple projects, primarily in Central Asia, but has had some successful growth and exit successes in the mining space. Mr. Shane Williams sits as a strategic advisor to us, and he is currently the CEO at Westfield Lake Gold with a series of other successes under his belt. And Mr. Warren Levy, a natural resources professional with over 20 years in the Southern Cone, predominantly South America in general, not just Mexico. But Mr. Levy has some very significant successes in his career, especially working with communities and how that works with expanding a large-scale portfolio of projects. Very happy to have this team of experience and brain power driving us forward and helping us with the strategic decisions we make as we turn Lucero back into production. Next slide, please. One significant win, as I had quickly alluded to earlier, is that through the portfolio generation and I guess growth phase of the company in the 1.0 story, which is now complete, we have proven our team's aptitude in terms of being able to generate revenue for the company, as well as generate, I guess, a good ROI for our investors in general, in the sense that we acquired Maverick Springs as part of a portfolio acquisition from Waterton Global Resource Management back in 2021. Since that time, we spent about 28 months. We went through not just the acquisition, but the reimagining of an old historical resource of 1.8 million ounces. It was only ever conceived as an underground mine. And through reimagining it as a whittle pit and reassessing the data from the substantial, there's over 48,000 meters of drilling on the project, the substantial data set, we were able to increase the 43-101 reporting into an inferred mineral resource estimate of 3.71 million ounces of AuEq, of gold equivalency. Now, important to note that that's actually 1.37 million ounces of gold and 275 million ounces of silver. So that became very attractive as we were going around the planet looking for financing to start drilling out this project. Unfortunately, at the time that we were doing it, the market wasn't so hot for precious metals. We did find, instead of financing, we did find a sale partner. And this group, their ticker is SS1. They just went public on the 15th of this month on the ASX. And we did sell the asset to them. It is their primary focus inside that company. And for us, what that meant is that we proved that our team knows what it's doing and can do it. Obviously, come do it again, something similar. Number two, it brought a significant amount of cash to clean up the balance sheet in terms of outstanding debts that we still had to both Waterton as well as other third parties. And lastly, to continue ensuring that we have some upside to the growth of what Sun Silver, SSI, does to this asset, we retained 3.5 million shares of that company at its IPO level. I believe it's already tripled in value, so it's a fantastic balance sheet asset for us. Those shares are locked up for 1 year. So we will continue to grow with them. And over time, we anticipate being able to sell those shares off bit by bit to fund our own exploits. Next slide, please. All right, talking about, I know that we're all retail investors at one degree or another, so I'll focus on some of the value drivers here, the growth drivers inside Element 79. As we just talked about, Maverick Springs just completed that sale, and we're continuing to clean up the balance sheet and finish payments, as well as that'll leave us with a small war chest to continue moving things forward, both with our projects as well as a little bit of marketing dollars to keep the interest inside the company. Speaking about Lucero in Peru, our goal this year is to begin cash flowing from bulk sampling, as well as enhancing what the artisanal producers, as I had mentioned, they're currently producing at something like 70 to 100 tons a week. We want to be enhancing what they're doing and therefore start generating revenue. It will come in as, first in the form of a bit of a trickle. So a couple, maybe $50,000 to $100,000 a month. And then as we ramp up after a drilling program, we will ramp up to commercial production, and you'll start seeing the revenue grow thereafter. Now, we do have the intent to start approximately mid-summer of this year with a drilling program. The final, A, locations, and B, specific lengths or the total program size is yet to be finalized. But we will be starting that mid-summer, starting with underground and then finishing off with surface level drilling, which will provide us the opportunity to prove up a resource on this property, which is fantastic. Excuse me for just a moment. Now, one of the other items when it comes to this, in terms of being able to start that drill program, as I've talked about community relations in the past, I've always seen any mining project, and I think anyone who is prudent in the mining space should see every mining project as it is two projects. There is both a social aspect to it, as well as a mining project. So the focus on the geology, geophysics, etc. And what I mean by that is that the way things work in Peru is that while we are the mineral right holders of the project, the communities in general, there's only one core community that we work with specifically on our project, but the communities have access to the surface rights. And the Peruvian government designed things this way so as to ensure some kind of fair back and forth between the companies doing the work, as well as the locals, to make sure that there's a back and forth or one hand washing the other type effect. And in that, while we have requested a 10-year exploration permit, we actually requested 15 and we anticipate it will be 10. In the similar fashion, the community has requested from us the ability to also continue working on the project in an artisanal fashion over the same period of time. Now, in that, the community just brought in a new mayor, and as they continue to finish off their community charter amongst themselves, we're waiting for that to happen, because until that happens, no one can sign a legally binding agreement on behalf of the community for any other contract. So we anticipate this happening in the near term, somewhere in the next 45 to 60 days approximately. And once that happens, it's down to work this summer. On top of that, the agreement with the locals, as they get to continue producing, per the two contracts I just mentioned. Lastly, that requires that they actually sell their product to us. Doesn't mean we have to take physical delivery of it, but we get to direct where it goes. And that's where I said income will start coming in as a form of a trickle, where we will be effectively wholesaling their product to the market. Our goal ultimately is to get commercial production over the next 18 to 24 months up to a minimum of 200. That is our targeted minimum production that we would like to see. And you will see us ramp up over the next year to that level. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Again, just a quick review why this project is so attractive to us. It's because, number one, there's a past proof case of this being a producing mine, and a high grade one at that. 19 grams per ton. You may have heard it in the mining space, you can't beat grade. And what I mean by that is that for every scoop we pull out of the ground, it's just that much more efficient. To give you some form of context, many large-scale producing mines around the planet are producing in the 1 to 3 grams per ton range, or specifically speaking about our experience in Nevada, one of the neighboring projects called the projects neighboring the Maverick Springs project is called the Kinross Bald Mountain Mine. That mine's been in production for over, I believe, 25 years and has been producing at 0.5 gram per ton. Now, that's a massive materials handling game in terms of moving a lot of dirt around to get 0.5 gram per ton. In context, comparatively, 14 grams per ton gold and 373 grams per ton silver, resulting in 19 grams per ton gold equivalency, is a lot more attractive. Now, again, this mine is permitted today for 350 tons per day. All right, we can extract up to that. The reality is it was very functional as a mine at 150 tons per day of ore equivalency, of ore extraction that was yielding more than 40,000 ounces per year. So very attractive in terms of being able to turn this back on. Again, it's been very attractive for the locals to continue producing since the mine was last fully functional as a commercial operation for the last 19 years. And this is our main focus. We have been working through both surface and subsurface mapping, as well as doing some sampling, both grab samples and channel samples, which all of that has been modeled to feed what we're doing for a drill program this summer, and ideally prove up a resource and get ourselves to a PEA, a pre-economic assessment that includes a mine plan and getting to commercial production. Next slide, please. As I've just mentioned, here's our simple strategy. Number one, we through Q1 of this year, we have that modeling I just mentioned. Through Q2, sign up the agreement with the locals and basically start bringing their production under our wing, and then set drill targets for throughout the summer and prove up what I just mentioned, both a underground and surface drilling leading to a resource estimate, as well as mine plan, PEA, and potentially construction decisions as well when it comes to being able to process our own product versus using third-party tolling. So with that in mind, keep, as I had already mentioned, your eyes on us as we look towards, over the next 18 to 24 months, ramping up commercial production and I guess more revenue generation, which is great for us all in terms of growth. Next slide, please. This just quickly outlines some of the vein mapping, and we can continue forward if you don't mind. Next slide. Going back to the simple point is that there are two projects underway. First and foremost, we have to play nice in the sandbox, and we're very happy to do so when it comes with our neighbors. We're very conscious of the fact that we are the tourists coming in and doing work in this area, and while we may have the mineral rights, we're very conscious of having the correct relationship and upholding standards for both work, safety, overall optimization, making sure there's a fair, I guess we'll say, pay structure in terms of being able to access the mine and benefit the community. And ultimately, we've been investing, if you wouldn't mind jumping to the next slide, we've been investing in with a local Peruvian NGO that's known in this state for helping both assess everything from educational standards to understanding about the economy, to understanding about social standards inside the community, and helping, educate and share and help the community grow from the inside. These are all along national level, Peruvian national level education standards, as well as international standards that fit along with the UN Charter of 17 items in terms of sustainable growth and working inside the artisanal small mining community world. So we're very happy to do this, and we will continue to enhance our efforts inside the community over time by continuing with these efforts as well as additional ones as we continue to grow the mine. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'll make a quick comment about our other projects in Nevada. Just very quickly, these two projects were kept. We did have a portfolio. We grew from one project to 20, and then we have been paring them down in terms of either sales, or we did strategically drop 9 of them because just effectively you take the best, the cream of the crop, and we will continue to explore on these two projects over time. Kindly stay tuned throughout the summer because we will be releasing a exploration program on both of these projects. And in addition to that, look forward to potentially some 43-101 reporting on these projects as well. So that's all I mentioned for the time being. Again, Lucero is our main project for the main motivator for us all to grow forward. Next slide, please. Last but not least, a quick review of the corporate structure. Number one, we did, after the 1.0 story completing itself, effectively November to December of last year, we completed a 10-1 consolidation of the shares. Effectively, that made the company more attractive in terms of being able to attract new capital and really focus our story on where we're going with redeveloping Lucero. Having said that, we went from 130 million shares all the way down to 13 million shares. We then consolidated approximately $5.76 million of debt and outstanding accounts payable that were on the balance sheet. We then did a couple small capital raises to keep our projects moving forward. And ultimately, we also completed just recently the sale of Maverick Springs, which did bring in some non-dilutive capital to basically clean up the remaining amount of the balance sheet and drive our projects forward. If you can see the pie chart here in terms of founders, strategics, and institutional holders, we're largely held by them. Management board owns approximately 16%. Condo Resources, which is our counterparty to the Lucero project in terms of us buying into it, in terms of progress payments over the last 4 years and one final payment due in December of this year before a variable payment in 2026. They own 2% of our balance sheet because they do understand how we're building and growing this company, and we're grateful to have them as shareholders and transactional counterparties. The retail float is only about 17% of the overall cap table. With that in mind, what we're looking to do is not necessarily do too many more equity raises, especially at these levels, but we are definitely working with a number of different streaming, royalty, or capital debt groups that would bring us the capital to advance the project towards cash flow. Given that we are so close to cash flow, it becomes a lot more appealing to them. There's line of sight on funding for them, and I think that that's really one of the big levers that you're going to see come forward here in the near future in terms of being able to move our project forward to cash flow with non-dilutive capital. There we go. This is Element 79 in a nutshell. Thank you very much for your time. I look forward to your questions, and definitely you can following along. Kindly let me know how I can help.
Excellent. Thank you, James. I get the idea here that you, as I think you said in the beginning, are buying low and selling high. At least that was the conclusion of the Maverick here. Can I just expose my ignorance here on the gold and mining field here? Do you have any sort of metrics when it comes to the gold price, where you think that now it's time to buy? Because you mentioned two of the sides here. Reason why they stopped producing or why they were selling was because it was a gold price that wasn't, sufficient for them, but apparently for you to buy.
As a personal investor, I have been, we'll call it dollar cost averaging my buying into precious metals for decades now. So always hold a component of my own portfolio in physical bullion in that regard. When it comes to where gold may go, I'm sorry, my crystal ball is broken. And because of COVID, the store that sells crystal balls has been closed. So no, I will not throw out any economic predictions of where the gold and or silver prices are going, but definitely the momentum is behind them right now. You're seeing central bank buying continue and ramp up, as well as a lot more retail purchasing around the planet, especially in Asia and South Asia, which I think bodes well, realistically, for anybody holding those commodities, as well as for any mine that can actually bring more of that physical product to market. I think that bodes very well in terms of the business of putting a mine back into production in the short
run. So if we then look at your sale of the Maverick, you weren't necessarily looking to sell it, but in this case, instead of financing and drilling, they made an offer you couldn't refuse. Is that the way to look at
it? That's a fair assessment. I mean, obviously, if I knew then what prices were going to be today, I'm sure we would have negotiated harder in terms of pricing and or additional value levers to be kicked into the deal. At the same time, hindsight's 2020. Yes, you're right. When you're managing a portfolio and you have no cash flow, but obviously cash burns, the reality is that sometimes you have to sell off some of your more precious trading cards through the process. And we're very happy to see that a very capable and competent team at Sun Silver, which was the acquiring party, now has the project and will be driving it forward. So very happy to have done that, because it gave us a clean balance sheet and a lot more focus to drive forward at Lucero.
And also, if I'm not mistaken, you also got equity in the buyer here. So you are on the way on the upside on your previous assets. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct. So 3.5 million shares of Sun Silver. They IPO'd at 20 cents. I believe on Friday the stock had closed just after their IPO. The stock had closed at 60 something cents, 62. So very happy in terms of their performance to date. The market obviously is excited for the ability to bring silver to market and hear about the plans, what they're going to be doing in terms of improving through drilling, improving that resource on that asset. And we're very happy to be shareholders as we continue to grow through that.
So you're eating the cake and having the cake here. Can I just switch quickly to Peru here? If I understood it correctly, the artisanal miners, they're not employed by you, but they will deliver gold to you, or how should one look at that?
The artisanal miners are independent. You're absolutely right in that regard. They work by themselves, for themselves. And unfortunately, the reality of this mine is that since it was last in commercial production, effectively all previous or subsequent owners up until us have been absentee. So in the similar sense of, if you're walking through the forest and you see a tree and you want to grab it, who's going to stop you, right? If the former mineral right holders had not been there to, I guess, as eagerly as we are to put the mine back into production, to exert their rights and try and work out a deal with them, the artisanal miners have just continuing to do what they effectively, as I guess we can phrase it, as squatters. They will continue to do what they want to do. Now, having said that, they do respect that there is a certain amount of mutual respect where they have the surface rights, we have the mineral rights, and if we are going to be putting this into production, there is an overt, we'll say, value of us working with the community, because us going to the community and saying we want to put this back into production requires us to invest in the community, not just on an annual basis, but on a per ton basis for anything extracted. There will be a certain amount. Again, the final terms of the contracts are being finalized, so I can't really speak to that until the terms are set and signed. But it will be something to that effect. So helping along with the NGO with all the community programs that we have, and as well as the financial benefits and splashovers, as well as elevating the, when we do start working together and side by side with them, elevating the level of operational health and safety and overall project economics as more activity happens on site. So there are some great benefits for us all to be playing in the sandbox nicely together.
So basically, they're working for you, but you're not paying them in one way. That's one way of looking at it, because they will extract gold, and you can point that gold in one direction. Is that a way to understand it?
Probably the cleanest way to look at it is that they will continue doing what they do. We will work side by side, especially in the earliest of years. I would imagine that there would be an overt kind of a point of just simple economics, where as we ramp up, there will be a more of a benefit for us to work directly aligned versus just side by side. But during the way the contracts are designed, during the earliest of phases, they will continue doing what they do, but for the ability for us to grant them the ability to mine, they then have to sell their product to us. And yes, as we had just covered, we would then be wholesaling or reselling that product to third parties, tolling mills in the region, to generate that revenue, and they would get the lion's share of the revenue, and we would just get a commission for that product because they've done the investment to work on that product. Excellent.
And one question here regarding the let's say the talent stack that you have, and also, let's say, the financial approach. Is there any geographical limitations regarding asset acquisitions? Now you're in the US and in Peru.
I would argue that logistically speaking, number one, we're a small, tight company. We don't have a massive scale of humans working with us and for us. So logistically speaking, if future M&A acquisitions and so on were to happen, they would likely happen inside Peru, and especially in the short run. While I'm very comfortable being an entrepreneur and I run my companies from startup to, with bootstraps and backpacks and, effectively wherever there's an internet connection, you can get work done. The reality is that I would not want to be spread in too many jurisdictions or time zones, for everything from, personal health, mental sanity, as well as family. The reality is you don't want to be spread too thin in too many different directions.
So we should be looking for a consolidation phase rather than an acquisition phase of the rest of the world.
I would say that's a safe bet. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any idea of partners accepting a bid, or will you continue to sell refined assets and extract cash flow from existing assets? Are you open for a bid?
Well, I wouldn't sell Lucero in the short run. I have to be realistic in terms of different structures of finance, and whether that means equity and or debt, whether at the company or at the project level. We are reviewing a number of different options. But the reality is I wouldn't sell Lucero right now. Number one, given where the market price is for gold. Number two, where the project is so close to cash flow. And number three, once we do get to revenue generation, the reality is now we have a replenishing war chest each and every month we can use for not just internal operations, but for expanding our own operations, whether that's through exploratory drilling or further acquisitions. Again, domestically or at least in the Americas, because again, logistically, I don't want to spread myself too wide, too thin. But the simple reality is that, the money makes the deal. So we'll see, through our own analysis of the different options that are table and continue to come to us. We'll see what the best fit is, but I don't foresee us selling Lucero in the near term anyways.
Excellent. Thank you for that, James. It seems like this year will be, well, a very hectic and interesting year, but predominantly on consolidation and continuous cash flow. So thank you very much, James. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It has been. Thank you. I very much appreciate your time here today.
And thank you all viewers. Tack ska ni ha, ni som tittat, och de frågor som vi fick in på förhand. Och då säger vi bara tack för oss och på återseende. Hej då!